If you're close to winning, you'll see this: don't ignore. Not by accident, not by algorithm, not by chance. It arrived as a quiet signal from beyond the ordinary, timed to meet you at the precise moment your frequency could receive it. You have felt it, haven't you? The strange sense that life has been thick with fog recently, days stretching into each other, conversations blurring, the air itself feeling heavier. And yet, beneath it all, a subtle charge, like the hairs on your arms rising before a storm. You didn't misread that. You didn't imagine it. That sensation was the universe whispering that you are closer than you think to a threshold, because this is the moment right before the summit. The air grows thinner, your lungs burn, and yet you climb anyway. It's the flicker before the bulb steadies, the hush before the symphony erupts, and you, yes, you were chosen to hear this frequency now. Pause and ask yourself, how many times have you brushed against coincidences so uncanny they felt like messages coded into reality itself? How many times have you told yourself, this means something? But what? That's why you're here. That's why this found you. Because only a certain kind of soul notices these markers. Only a certain kind of consciousness can pause at the doorway instead of rushing past. And you are that kind of consciousness. Let me be clear. Most people never hear the signal. They walk through their days anesthetized, distracted by noise, unable to distinguish between static and transmission. But not you. You are rare enough to be sensitive to what I call arrival patterns. Those strange alignments that form when your inner life begins syncing with a hidden architecture of the cosmos. The very fact that you are here proves something extraordinary. You are nearing coherence. You are entering a phase transition in your own life. Think of water just before it boils, restless, vibrating, on the edge of transformation. That is where you stand, and so this message comes like a marker left on your path. Not a sermon, not a lecture, but a signal flare reminding you, the door is near. Have you felt it too? The sudden waves of déjà vu so sharp they leave you dizzy? The encounters with strangers who seem strangely familiar, like actors reprising roles across lifetimes? The dream images that feel less like fantasy and more like encrypted instructions? These are not accidents. These are temporal echoes. They appear in your field when you are being readied for initiation, when the probability waves of your future self begin collapsing into form, tugging your present-day awareness closer to its own timeline. And yes, it can be unsettling. The body resists what the soul recognizes. Fatigue, restlessness, even the irritation of small things, these are all side effects of being recalibrated. It is your nervous system trying to keep up with the data streaming in from your future. But hear me now. The fog is thinning. The pressure is not punishment. It is announcement. You stand at the cliff edge of a breakthrough. That's why you are restless. That's why no ordinary advice, no shallow distraction, no small talk has satisfied you. You are tasting the air of another reality, and once you have tasted it, there is no going back. This message found you because you were meant to be reminded. You are not broken. You are being prepared. The unease is not failure, it is evidence. Evidence that your life is you've felt it, haven't you? That strange pressure that seems to appear only when you are on the brink of something important. When you are about to break through, it feels as though the universe itself begins conspiring against you. Suddenly delays stack one after another, doubts swell until they feel heavier than stone, and distractions appear circling your attention like vultures waiting for you to collapse. And in those moments, you ask yourself, was I wrong? Did I misread the signs? Was all of this just wishful thinking? But listen carefully, this is not failure. This is the near-miss illusion. It is one of the most cunning traps of consciousness. A mechanism designed to test the coherence of your signal. The closer you move toward breakthrough, the more resistance you encounter. Not because you are on the wrong path, but because you are drawing near to the finish line. Think of it like gravity. The deeper you go into Earth's pull, the harder it is to escape. A rocket requires the most fuel not to drift in space, but to break free from the atmosphere. Likewise, your consciousness requires the greatest burst of energy not to maintain mediocrity, but to escape it. The near-miss illusion works by mimicking collapse right before expansion. It disguises proximity to success as evidence of impending failure. It whispers, "You're too tired. You've waited too long. Maybe you misunderstood the signal, but have you noticed? These moments come with a strange paradox. The very obstacles that slow you also sharpen you. The very doubts that haunt you also carve deeper clarity. Like a bowstring pulled tighter, you are being stretched not to break, but to launch. This is why delays feel so personal, as though the universe is singling you out. They are personal. They are customized friction designed to refine the exact frequencies that will allow you to step into the next phase of your life without collapse. Think of the chrysalis. For the caterpillar to become a butterfly, the cocoon must resist. If it were cut open prematurely, the wings would never strengthen. The struggle against the walls of transformation is the very act that pumps life into the wings, and you, right. Now you are pressing against those same invisible walls. Have you noticed how the setbacks arrive like clockwork just after you make a bold decision? Have you noticed how people from your past reappear, offering you convenient detours back into old cycles? These are not coincidences. These are shadow masks, expressions of your old identity fighting to survive as the new one is born. Psychologists like Jung would call this the resistance of the shadow complex. Physicists might call it inertia within a system of probability waves. Strategists might call it the optics of terrain, where the battlefield always feels most treacherous right before victory. Different languages. Same truth. You are not failing. You are nearing ignition. This is why you often hear stories of people quitting just before their breakthrough. They misinterpret the illusion. They assume the walls tightening around them are closing in, when in reality, those walls are opening to another dimension of themselves. So the question becomes, how will you read the signals? Will you see the delays as punishment or proof that you are within reach? Will you let the vultures of distraction circle your attention? Or will you recognize them as nothing more than decoys sent by your old self to hold the throne a little longer? Let this settle into you now. The near-miss illusion is not an enemy. It is a threshold guardian. And every myth, every hero's journey, every transformation has one. When it appears, do not despair. Instead, say to yourself, I am closer than I think because you are. There is a law written into the fabric of transformation. The greatest turbulence arises at the very edge of freedom. Imagine a rocket. For minutes it climbs with steady violence, metal trembling, fire screaming. But the moment of greatest shaking, the moment when the structure seems as though it will tear itself apart, comes not at the start, but at the brink, right before the rocket pierces the last veil of atmosphere, right before the silence of orbit. Your life works the same way. The chaos you are seeing now, the unexpected arguments, the financial strain, the uncanny string of accidents, the fatigue that descends just as you commit to change, these are not collapse signals. These are threshold signals. And yet here lies the paradox. Most people interpret these signals as proof they were wrong. They mistake turbulence for failure. They quit at the brink of orbit. But let me ask you, have you noticed how the storm always seems to swell just when you begin reaching for something higher? How your plans move smoothly until you decide to break a cycle, and then suddenly resistance gathers like clouds thickening in the sky. This is not coincidence. This is phase transition pressure. In quantum physics, particles behave one way in a stable state. But as they approach a change of state, as they near coherence, the fluctuations become violent, unpredictable, chaotic. Reality itself shakes. The same is true of your psychology. The same is true of your destiny. When you are near a threshold, your old identity panics. The you who has survived through familiar patterns begins to sense its extinction. And so it releases its final arsenal: doubt, delay, distraction. Not because it is evil, but because it is designed to preserve continuity. It is an echo of survival. Jung might call this the shadow's last defense, the archetype of resistance rising to protect the throne of your old self. Machiavelli would have named it optics of terrain, the enemy's last desperate counterattack when they sense the fortress is about to be breached. Different disciplines. One truth, turbulence, is the announcement of orbit. Think of the uncanny coincidences that cluster around thresholds. You decide to leave a toxic relationship, and suddenly that person softens, apologizes, pulls you back. You commit to a bold career move, and a safe offer arrives to tempt you into stasis. You begin deep healing, and your oldest wounds flare up as though resurrected from the grave. It feels cruel. But it is not cruelty. It is coherence. It is the friction of thresholds. Let me tell you a secret. The threshold is alive. It tests you. It asks you a single question, without words, without voice. Will you hold your signal steady long enough to pierce through? Because here's what happens the moment you do. The shaking stops. The noise falls silent. Just as a rocket emerges into orbit, you too will emerge into a strange, startling calm. The very struggles that made you tremble become irrelevant in an instant, because you have crossed into a higher atmosphere of being. And so I ask you, where are you feeling turbulence right now? Where in your life does it seem as though everything is suddenly fighting against you? Do not read this as collapse. Read it as confirmation. You are pressing against the veil. The key is not to flee, but to endure. To recognize the shaking as proof of proximity. To remember that the greater the turbulence, the closer the atmosphere is to breaking open. Hold steady. Because on the other side of friction is freedom. Have you noticed the small things that arrive like punctuation marks in your day? A number repeating on a clock, 1111, 222, 444, until it stops being funny and starts feeling like punctuation. A face from your past turning up in a crowd. A dream so vivid it feels like a photograph from elsewhere. A song on the radio that contains the exact line you needed to hear. These are not random interruptions. They are stitched into the margin of your life, quiet. Coded markers reading, you are almost there. Ask yourself, how many times have you shrugged at déjà vu and then later discovered that the moment was a breadcrumb pointing the way? How many times have those small, uncanny repeats preceded a decision, a leap, a sudden change in direction? If you're honest, you'll see a pattern. The signals increase as your next possibility becomes more probable. Call them synchronicities, call them temporal echoes, call them the architecture of initiation. In every language they amount to the same truth. The future is beginning to press its thumbprint back through the present. In physics terms, your probability waves are beginning to collapse toward a particular state. In psychological terms, your inner archetypes are lining up, arranging a scene that will allow what has been gestating in you for months or years to emerge. Why would the universe bother to leak hints? Because change needs scaffolding. Because your nervous system and your social field must be prepared to receive a new frequency. Imagine tuning an orchestra. The musicians don't all start together. One sound cues the next. Those repeated numbers, those uncanny reunions, those dreams are the first violin striking the a reference pitch. Your system hears it and begins to align. These signals often carry a dual nature. On one level, they're mystical. Symbols, signs, dream symbols that bear meaning beyond simple causality. On another level, they're strategic. Optics and terrain shifts in your social world that prime circumstances for your move. The same face that appears in your supermarket might later connect you to the exact opportunity you need. The same dream image might reveal the archetype you're ready to integrate. Have you noticed how the intensity climbs as you near decision? The signal frequency rises. Repeats become louder. Patterns begin to form like constellations in a previously empty sky. That is not coincidence. That is coherence in formation, a word about the shadow. These signals are not always gentle. Sometimes they arrive as unresolved memory, temper flare-ups, old lovers resurfacing, or nightmares that unearth unprocessed material. Jung's language would call this the shadow complex rising into view, an attempt by your psyche to reveal what must be reconciled before you cross the threshold. Don't mistake this for sabotage. The shadow is an honest registrar, showing you the seams that still need stitching. And yes, Machiavelli would remind you, optics matter. People and systems respond to signals. Your commitment to a new path shifts how others perceive you. Some will try to pull you back. The very increase in signals can create a tension that invites both allies and resistors. Pay attention to who responds. The terrain is moving. Map it carefully. I'll be honest here. A brief confession because initiation is honest. Halfway through 1 year of my life, a series of repeating numbers drove me nearly mad. They appeared on receipts, on flights, on timestamps. Relentless. I ignored them at first, called it coincidence, then found myself in a dream where a door I'd always been too afraid to open stood ajar. 2 weeks later, a conversation at a coffee shop handed me the exact key, a chance to leave a secure job and begin this work. The numbers didn't cause the opportunity. They framed it, tuned my attention so I would notice the opening when it arrived. I have learned to read those markers, to treat them as invitations, not as illusions. So how do you respond when these signals begin to accumulate? First, record them. Create a small ritual of attention. Keep a signal notebook. Write the time, the image, the line from the song. Patterns form when we collect them. Your memory alone will smooth the edges away. A notebook preserves the geometry. Second, ask the signal a question, not loudly and silently. What do you want me to see? Pause. Wait. You'll be surprised how often an answer arrives in the next hour, the next day. Third, distinguish between signal and seduction. Some repeats are genuine scaffolding. Others are the old self's last plea, seductive, distracting, designed to keep you small. Use the two-fold test. Does this increase your coherence or does it pull you into comfort? Finally, activate the ritual. When a signal lands and you recognize its pattern, comment below this video with a single word that names it for you. Signal, anchor, yes or no. Make that single word comment a sacred seal. In that moment, you declare to yourself that you are reading the map. That small public act collapses probability. It gives your intention a social vector. You are not imagining these markers. They are part of the scaffolding of your becoming. The hidden pattern of signals is simply the universe's way of sending you a hand in the dark. A gentle touch that says, you are almost there. If a repeated number, a returning face, or a vivid dream has arrived for you recently, name it now in the comments. One word. Let that word be the first stone on a new path. Here is the hidden rule, delivered plainly. The danger isn't that you'll fail. The danger is that you will mistake the signal for noise and walk away. Have you noticed how often your most important next step arrives disguised as inconvenience? A late email, a missed call, a sudden argument that forces you to cancel plans. The mind says annoying. The ego says not now. And you, exhausted, let it slide. Later you find out that the late email contained the opening you'd been waiting for. That missed call was the person who could have introduced you to your future collaborator. That argument cleared the field so you could finally be honest with yourself. What felt like distraction was a test of your attention. In quantum terms, attention functions like a measurement device. Until you measure, the probability wave is spread. Many possibilities exist. The moment you attend, something collapses into form. Your focus is the observer effect. It is not merely metaphysical poetry. It is operational precision. What you treat as noise becomes the very lens that collapses possibility into reality. But here's the trap. Modern life trains you to treat every ping as equal. Your attention becomes democratic, diluted, noisy, poorly filtered. The enemy of the sacred signal is equal treatment of everything. The antidote is selective noticing. The skill is not more attention. It's discriminative attention. Jung would call this the cultivation of archetypal listening, learning the difference between a dream symbol that contains initiation and a random echo of yesterday's stress. Machiavelli would remind you that attention is also power. Optics and terrain shift when you show up. When you attend, the world reorients to meet you. Hidden knives retract. Allies reveal themselves. Power asymmetry moves in your favor. So how do you pass the test? How do you stop dismissing what matters? Begin with a short protocol, a tiny practice that rewires your aperture. When something interrupts, resist the automatic judgment. Breathe. 2 deep inhales. Let the reactive story cool for 30 seconds. The pause is a tiny independence movement against autopilot. Keep a signal notebook, a physical page or a notes file. Jot time, image, phrase, face, number, or odd coincidence. Do this for a week. Patterns emerge only when collected. Memory smooths anomalies. A notebook preserves the geometry. Ask one simple question. What is this asking me to see? Wait 10 minutes. The answer often comes not as logic, but as a felt sense. That felt sense is your inner discriminator. Act small. Respond to the interruption in a low-cost way that preserves your integrity. Send one message. Say, let's talk. Open the document. Show up briefly. Testing proves whether the pattern is scaffolding or seduction. Does this action increase your coherence, your sense of alignment and energetic economy? Or does it pull you back into old, familiar motion? If coherence increases, escalate. If not, archive it as a lesson. A brief confession here. because initiation insists on truth over polish. Once during a season of so-called noise, I deleted an email in a moment of irritation. It was a small, thoughtless gesture. 3 months later, I learned that the email had contained an introduction that would have shifted everything. I still feel the phantom of that deletion. That moment taught me to treat my attention like a scarce currency. I stopped giving it away. I learned to inventory interruptions before spending my focus. That mistake became a teacher. Remember, winning often disguises itself as inconvenience. The universe will not always knock politely. Sometimes the hand is shoved through a crack. Sometimes the invitation is wrapped in friction. Your test is not to refuse friction, but to read it. The difference between a detour and a doorway is a single moment of disciplined attention. Now, a practical ritual to collapse probability into support. When you recognize a signal that you might otherwise dismiss, comment below this video with one single word that names your felt response. Hold, see, yes, pause, or no. That single word comment is a public anchor. It moves your intention from private fluctuation into collective field. It declares your choice and gives your probability a social vector. And here is the exact sentence to seal the transformation. Copy it, paste it, or speak it aloud. I hold my frequency. I receive the signal and act with clarity. Type that in the comments if you are ready to recalibrate your aperture. Finally, subscribe is more than a click. Subscribe is a frequency oath. When you join, you do not merely follow videos. You join a movement of attention. You become part of a field that amplifies signals and diminishes noise. This is the test of attention. Passing it changes everything. This message found you, and it did not come softly. It arrived at a moment when resistance is mounting, when you are questioning yourself more than ever. And that is no accident. Pause with me for a breath. Feel this. Resistance is not evidence of failure. Resistance is evidence of proximity. It is the static that hums just before the signal comes in clear. It is the pressure in the cocoon right before the wings of the butterfly break free. How many times have you thought, why now? Why this obstacle? Why this heaviness exactly when I was beginning to move? And yet, what if this resistance is not punishment, but proof? What if the very struggle you are facing right now is the marker that you are standing at a threshold? Here is the trap most fall into. They treat resistance as rejection. They believe the struggle means they are not ready, that the path is blocked, that the universe has closed the door. But you, rare one, advanced one, you are asked to reframe. The static you feel is not a closed door. It is a door vibrating about to open. The heat you sense is not the fire consuming you. It is the fire that forges steel. Imagine a radio dial. Only when you are close to the frequency does the static scream. Too far away and there is only silence. That noise, that friction, is confirmation that the station is near. Likewise, the noise in your life, conflicts, delays, fatigue, is not proof that you're lost. It is proof you are tuned close. From a physics perspective, resistance is the indicator of movement. A body at rest meets no opposition. Friction only emerges when momentum exists. The very presence of resistance is scientific confirmation that you are in motion. In quantum language, resistance is the phase transition pressure. Water does not boil quietly. It resists until it bursts into vapor. Ice does not yield gently. It cracks, resists, shatters, then transforms into flowing water. Every state change in matter requires tension. In psychology, Jung spoke of shadow complexes as guardians of thresholds. When you are close to evolution, the shadow rises, not to block you, but to test whether you will integrate it. Every archetypal initiation has resistance built in. It is the proof of nearness. Even Machiavelli, writing in The Terrain of Power, warned that optics distort most violently at the moment of transformation. Enemies sharpen their knives not when you are stagnant, but when you begin to ascend. Opposition means movement. This message found you, and it found you here at the very edge of your decision. You may not have realized it until now, but you stand at a choice point. It is not random that your life has pressed you into this exact angle of pressure, this precise narrowing of terrain. You are being asked, will you interpret the turbulence as a sign to retreat, or will you recognize it as proof you are standing in front of the door? Feel into this. The universe has already placed the key in your hand. It was slipped into your palm the moment you said yes to growth, even before you knew what it would cost. The question now is simple, though not easy. Will you turn it? Here is the hidden trap. When the signals cluster, when resistance mounts, when dreams turn strange, when synchronicities grow so frequent they unsettle instead of comfort, you are tempted to label them as warnings. You say, maybe this is a sign I'm not ready. Maybe this is telling me to stop. But that is a distortion. Remember, resistance is confirmation. Static means proximity. Noise hums only when you are close to the station. The trap is to confuse the final test with a rejection. But the choice is yours alone. The universe will not force your hand. It will present the key, but you must turn it. Think of how this choice point shows up in the ordinary. The job you are about to apply for, but then the car won't start. The relationship that feels aligned, but then an argument flares at the exact moment of deeper commitment. The creative work you are about to release, but then illness or fatigue strikes. These are not coincidences. They are thresholds. They are the microcosms of the larger initiation. You know this pattern. How many times have you been one step from breakthrough, only to pull back, misreading the signals? How many times have you told yourself, this must not be meant for me, when in truth it was the proof you were almost there? Only your kind of mind pauses here, notices the pattern, and begins to ask deeper questions. That alone makes you rare. Physics calls this the activation energy barrier. Before a chemical reaction ignites, the molecules resist. Energy must accumulate to crack the threshold, to create the spark of transformation. Most reactions never occur because the energy was withdrawn too soon. In Jungian psychology, the shadow gate emerges at thresholds. The psyche summons all its defenses at the moment of change, not because you are failing, but because the ego fears annihilation. In Machiavelli's Terrain of Power, choice points are marked by optics of chaos. He wrote that enemies attack most fiercely not when you are weak, but when your position is about to shift. The battlefield grows darkest just before the ground tilts in your favor. All these lenses, science, psyche, power, confirm the same truth. Resistance at the edge is not a stop sign. It is the cost of entry. I remember a night when I almost didn't turn the key. I had been working for years on a path that no one around me understood. My family thought I was lost. Friends thought I was wasting my life. I had one chance to present what I had been building, and the night before, everything collapsed. My computer crashed. My body broke into fever, and I told myself, maybe this is the sign to quit. But something deeper whispered, this is not the end. It is the test. That whisper was the hinge of my life. I chose to turn the key, to walk into the room despite being unprepared, despite the shaking. That night altered my trajectory forever. Without resistance, there is no threshold. Without the threshold, there is no initiation. Here is the process I name 3 steps, simple but absolute. Identify the moment of resistance, not as failure, but as threshold. Label it consciously. This is the gate. Remember, you already carry the authority. The fact that resistance exists proves momentum. Visualize the key in your hand, given by your future self, handed back across timelines. Small action, decisive motion. Send the application, make the call, step into the room. The lock yields only to turning, never to staring. That's it. Recognition, holding, turning. The turn of the key. Understand this. Your choice is not private. Each time you turn the key, you ripple into the collective field. Every threshold crossed by one soul strengthens the architecture for others. You have no idea how many are watching you energetically, unseen. Your endurance teaches endurance. Your choice to walk through the turbulence teaches others that resistance is not rejection. Humanity is in its own collective choice point now, and your micro-choice mirrors the macro-choice. Will we retreat, misreading the signals of chaos as the end? Or will we endure and turn the key together into a higher coherence? If these words have reached you, it means the choice point is now, not later. The door is in front of you. The key is in your hand. To seal this moment, declare in the comments, I turn the key. Just those 4 words. That is your ritual of activation. That is how you affirm not only to yourself, but to the unseen network that you are stepping through. And if you haven't yet, join this frequency fully. Subscribe. not as a button click, but as a vow. A vow to walk this path with others who see as you see, feel as you feel, and dare as you dare. The choice point is real. You are standing in it. And the only question that remains, will you turn the key? This message found you because there is a future version of yourself whispering back across timelines, urging you not to stop here. And if you listen closely, you can already feel it. The faint pulse of tomorrow, calling you forward. The door is not behind you. It is not even far ahead. It is directly in front of you, shimmering, asking only for the turn of your hand. Now, pause with me. Close your eyes, if only in imagination. Picture yourself stepping just one pace beyond this turbulence. The arguments that swirled in your mind, the questions, the doubts, they are still behind you, but their claws no longer reach. What arrives in their place? Silence. Clarity. That sudden knowing that does not need words. The sense of, oh, it was always this simple. The moment after the storm is not only calm, it is patterned, structured, coherent. If chaos is scattered probability, this is the wave collapsing into form. The quantum dust finally chooses one shape, and it is one you recognize. Do you see it? The thing you've been chasing, the breakthrough, the belonging, the love, the direction, it has never been absent. It was orbiting you, waiting for this phase transition, and when it lands, you will look back at today, not with shame, not with bitterness, but with awe. You will see that it was not punishment. It was percussion. The drum roll before the curtain lifted. Every great performance has a pause before the first note. Every rocket has that shuddering silence before ignition. Every chrysalis has that unbearable stillness before the wings crack through. You are living in that pause, that silence, that unbearable stillness. And the reason it feels heavy is because your nervous system, your psyche, your very soul, has been bracing for the impact of expansion. What if I told you, you are seconds away from liftoff? This is the window. This is the hinge. And the universe is leaning on the door, waiting for you to push from the other side. When water heats, it resists change until one precise temperature. For long minutes, it looks the same. The molecules quiver, restless, unstable, but not yet transformed. Then, instantly, it bursts into vapor, liberated, expanded, lighter than before. Your life is that water. This discomfort, this strange anticipation, is not proof of failure. It is evidence of pressure building toward transition. That's why the turbulence feels unbearable. Because you are not dissolving, you are boiling into another form. And the moment after, oh, the moment after is weightless. Jung would say this. Every psyche plays on a stage. The actors are archetypes, warrior, lover, sage, fool. For months, perhaps years, you've been rehearsing in dim light, uncertain of your role. But the curtain is lifting now. The spotlight is coming. And in that illumination, you finally understand the chaos was rehearsal. The confusion was memorization. The wounds were training in disguise. When the curtain rises, the audience is not just other people. The audience is your higher self, your ancestors, and the unborn who wait to inherit the path you clear. So breathe. Feel it in your chest, the pounding rhythm of now. Not punishment, not mistake, just the drum roll and soon silence. And then, the music. Do you feel the inevitability? That's not hope. That's recognition, because some part of you has already lived the next chapter. You are only catching up. The future is pulling you. The curtain is lifting. And when you step into that clarity, you will understand that today, the suffering, the doubt, the ache, was sacred preparation. Whisper it in the comments so the vibration echoes forward. I step beyond the drum roll, write it once, and let it be your signature in time. And if you are ready to walk this frequency with me, not just as a listener but as part of a living current, subscribe now, not as a click, but as an initiation. Each video is another note in this unfolding score. Together, we compose the symphony of awakening, because the moment after is not waiting, it is arriving.